Welcome to another TIMCA Academy Learning Lab. In this Back to Basics session, we are going to have a quick look at the difference between facilitating and teaching. And we are developing in this lab pillars 2 and 3, so it's about facilitation of learning in the clubs, and this is also a skill that you can apply to other workplaces beyond TIMCA. You've probably heard us all say at some point that as a coach you are a facilitator of learning and not a teacher. This is in written documents and whenever we've had face-to-face sessions or during other learning labs. You are a facilitator of learning and not a teacher. But what does this really mean? What is the difference between these two things? In this session, we will find out. If you want to follow along in your notes, we are working with page 1 of 2 at the moment. So let's look at the differences in a very broad way to start with. A teacher is a subject expert, tends to be, they're a teacher of mathematics or they're a lecturer in science or engineering or so on. And they instruct a group or teach a group or deliver information to a group in acquiring new skills, knowledge and understanding. Okay, so we're teaching new things here. Okay. A facilitator helps people learn together in a group. All right. So these people are going to be facilitated. Their learning is going to be facilitated by being together in a group. And it's the group that's important in terms of how the learning goes forward. Or facilitation can help with a group achieving something as a whole. So, for example, you might want to develop a growth mindset. So that's what you want to achieve, and a facilitator can help or that process to take place. Okay, so from a visual point of view, a teacher imparts, shares knowledge in one direction. So it tends to be that we have a teacher and we have participants, we have learners, we have children, we have students, and the information flows one way and the interaction flows one way. The teacher stands, talks and delivers information. Facilitator, on the other hand, is shaping a multi-directional learning process together with the other people who are in the group. So the people in the group, whether they're children or students, are communicating with each other, and they are communicating with the facilitator, and the facilitator is communicating with them. So the flow of information and the flow of ideas and the flow of discussion goes two ways. So the facilitator is an active part of the group and of the learning. And this is what we're trying to achieve in the clubs. It's always useful to go back to a dictionary to get a definition of a word. So this is the definition of facilitate. To make something easier or more likely to happen. So if we are facilitating, we're helping the learning to be easier, or we are hoping and helping to make sure that the learning happens. Interestingly, the word facilitate comes from the Latin facilis, which actually means easy. Let's dig a little bit deeper. Teachers are subject matter experts. We've already said that. And they pay their knowledge forward. So they know what they know, they have an experience in that subject, and they are then sharing that knowledge with other people in terms of their teaching. Okay, they're delivering that, they're imparting it, and they're passing it on to other people. So it's their knowledge that they're passing on. They use their expertise also to design curricula and learning materials for their teaching. And then they deliver their subject knowledge with a focus on the content, what they know from their experience in their subject matter. And as we've seen, this usually goes into one direction, from the teacher to the child or from the teacher to the student. Facilitators, as we've already seen, are trying to shape or create a multi-directional learning process, so a process that goes backwards and forwards between people. And they do this by guiding and supporting the learning process. So they gently guiding, not controlling how the learning happens, and supporting people in their learning as they go along. They do this by promoting a collaborative and interactive approach. So the people in the group, in the learning group, are collaborating and working together, and they're interacting with each other, and they are interacting with the facilitator. They're not just sitting there as passive recipients of information or knowledge. Facilitators also create environments that encourage active learning, and they do this through participation and through paired and group discussions. So we can see that this multi-directional learning process happens because people are collaborating and they're interacting with each other, they're talking, they're discussing, they're participating. They're active in their learning. They're not just sitting, receiving. Okay, so we've had a very high-level look at the difference between teaching and facilitating. So how does this apply to clubs? And to the work that you do in clubs. So let's just step back a bit. I want you to remember some things that we've talked about in other learning labs. So as coaches, one of your jobs is to create a space in which children feel safe and supported in their pursuit of learning. Okay, so in their learning. And we all know, because we've talked about this before, that that safe space for learning includes the vibe or the mood, the ground rules that you have, the attitudes towards other people in the space, how we all behave in that space. But it also includes what you do and how you do it in this space. So if you're trying to facilitate learning, what are you doing and how are you doing it? Remember also, as coaches, you are meant to facilitate and not teach directly. You are also an active participant and a co-learner. So that means you learn alongside other people and the people that you're working with. So you learn alongside the children. You're also there to help the children feel okay about making mistakes, about being comfortable with struggle. So that's their growth mindset aspects. You're also there to help children think about their mathematics, enjoy their mathematics. Okay, and so the bit in red at the top is you are there to facilitate, but you're also there to be an active participant. You're not there to just deliver knowledge and then walk away. You're there to work with the children and to learn alongside them if necessary. So how does being a facilitator in a club help these things happen? So if you're facilitating your club, how does it help? If you want to follow along, we're on page 2 of 2 in your notes. Okay, so if you are facilitating learning in your clubs, this is what's going to happen. Your facilitation will help children to take responsibility for their lives, to grow into self-directed, self-aware people with a mindset of lifelong learning. Your facilitation will be child-centered. So that means it's about the children, it's about the people who are learning, and it's not about you as the teacher. It's about them. And the space is dedicated to learning, not teaching. The children will be actively participating in their learning process, and you will be actively participating in that process. Your facilitation will help children to learn and develop a positive mindset together in a group. So they're learning about what this means as they go along, as they work together as a group, how they get to know each other. Your facilitation will also make sure that the children are appreciated and valued for what they bring and contribute to the learning process. So everybody brings something, what they already know, what they don't know, and how they contribute that to the current learning. You as a facilitator are a learning process expert. You're not a subject matter expert. You also will be bringing structures and processes to help the group learn and to move forward. So these are your skills, your techniques, your activities, and so on that you use, that you bring to the club, that the children participate in, that helps the learning to move forward. And everybody there helps to work out alternatives and solutions to problems, including you. Okay? But the children do not look to you for answers. They don't look to you for right and wrong. You are there to help them to work that out for themselves, and to discuss it as groups. Do you ever teach in clubs? This might be something you're probably thinking to yourself now. Okay, so if I'm a facilitator, does that mean that I ever teach? Well, not really. That's not your role. Your role is to facilitate learning, as we've spoken about. But there will be times when you want to introduce children to some new learning, something that they might not have been taught in the classroom that you think will help them to learn and to move forward. And so it's acceptable to plan a short teaching session. What is meant by short? Well, we'll look at that again in a minute. So try not to fall into the trap of becoming a teacher in your club. You are a facilitator, not a teacher. So if you do have to introduce new learning, keep the duration, the time span short. Yeah, a few minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. Teaching should not be the default way of learning in your clubs. Facilitating the learning should be your default. And if you're a bit confused about this, go back to your notes that we did and to the video about session planning, and look at the information about attention spans and how you can plan for new learning, and just revisit that about how much time you can spend on things like this, and how you can to plan it into your club sessions. Okay, so this is the end of our session or our video on the differences between teaching and facilitating, and I hope you have a clearer idea now about what it means to facilitate learning in the clubs as opposed to teaching.